Welcome back to Pacific Ventures presents PropertyScape. Find the keys to your home. This week, on our ever popular and my personal favorite Expert Speak segment, we want to help you make the right choices. The new rent cap law brought in by RERA has left many of us fiddling with the numbers. To put things in perspective, we are joined by Mr. Kalpesh Sampath, who will help us put some method to this madness. He will shed some light on how much more you are expected to shell out as a tenant, and in the same breath, how much more you'd be raking in if you're a landlord. Let's go check it out. Welcome to Expert Speak. My name is Mihir. Today we come to you from the iconic Palm Jumeirah in Dubai. Today we're going to be talking to Mr. Kalpesh Sampath, Director of SPF Realty. SPF Realty is one of the leading real estate agencies in Dubai. It's a 360-degree agency looking into buying, selling, leasing, financing, escrow, management, handover, the entire works. Kalpesh, welcome to Expert Speak.
Thank you, Mihir. Thank you for having me.
Now, Kalpesh, recently Dubai has revised its rent cap law. Since then, it has become a very hot topic of discussion. Can you please explain to me this revision in the Dubai rent cap law?
In December 2013, there was an amendment issued to the rental law, whereby a landlord can increase the rent for his property based on the difference with the market rent.
Okay.
This is based on a slab system.
Okay.
And the revision is towards the slab system, whereby previously, if your rent was lower than the market rent, as calculated by the rental calculator on RERA's website,
Okay.
by 26% or more, only then could you increase your rent by 5%.
Fair enough, okay.
Now, if your rent is lower than the market rent by 11% or more, you can increase the rent by 5%.
Okay, so let me understand this correctly. There is a website, a RERA website, where there is a standard of each area.
Correct.
Okay, and it's based on what? The location as well as the size of the apartment and so on?
Correct.
Okay, so one could go to this website and check what their current rate is and what RERA says the market rate should be.
Correct.
Okay, fair enough. Then there was always a slab system in place.
That's right.
They've just changed the percentages to the slab system?
Absolutely correct. They've lowered the percentages so that you can now make a change or increase your rent. If your rent is 11% lower than the market rent, up to 20%, you can change it, increase it by 5%.
Okay.
If you are 21 to 30% lower, you can increase the rent by 10%.
Okay.
You basically go to the lower end of the slab, and half of that is the increase allowed by RERA.
Okay, so in the slab of 41 to 50%, you take the lower end, that's 41%, and take roughly the half of that. So it would be about 20%. So if my rent is 41 to 50% lesser than the market rate, then my rent increase would be 20%. Is that correct?
You can increase your rent by 20%.
Understood.
And that's the maximum increase allowed by RERA. You cannot increase your rent by more than 20% in a given year.
Okay.
Because they want to basically control the amount of rent that the tenant has to pay. So though they don't want the landlord to suffer by having extremely low rents compared to the market, they again don't want extremely high rents.
Okay.
So this is a good midway solution whereby the landlord benefits because now his adjustments and increases are higher than in the past. At the same time, they are still controlling it, capping it by not allowing it to be raised by more than 20% at one go, irrespective of how lower your rent is compared to the market.
Okay, Kalpesh, can you give me a specific example in terms of numbers?
Sure. So, for example, we have to calculate what the market rent for your apartment would be.
Okay.
And we need to go to the website where the rental calculator is specified.
Okay.
This is www.dubailand.gov.ae and input the information of the apartment, 2 bedrooms, in the area, Bar Dubai, and the contract date, the tenancy contract, when is it expiring or starting. So let's say from today. When you input this information, the calculator would come up with the current market rent, say for example, 125,000, for example.
Okay.
Now, the landlord and yourself can look at your existing rent of 100,000 compared with the market rent of 125,000 as per the calculator, and come to the difference being 25% lower than the market rent.
Fair enough.
So now you need to go into the amended slabs and look at for 21 to 30%, which is the slab under which you fall, your rental can be increased by 10%.
Okay.
So the landlord can say your new rent is 110,000, 100,000 plus 10%, nothing more than 110,000.
Understood. Thank you for that. Just to clarify, the rent in Bardubai for a 2-bedroom is not necessarily 125,000. This is just an example. Okay, let's talk about a slight complication that occurs. Many times when landlords want to increase the rent beyond the slab system, they send the tenant an eviction notice. What can the tenant do in this scenario?
The tenant has all the rights to tell the landlord that he needs a 365-day notice, 1-year notice, prior to vacating the premises.
Okay.
So at the renewal or at the signing of a tenancy contract, if the landlord has given a 365-day notice, that's fine. At the expiry of 1 year, the tenant would need to vacate. But if he has not given any such notice, and 2 months prior to the expiry, if he asks the tenant to vacate, even if he wants to move into the premises, he is not allowed to do so.
Okay.
He has to give the tenant a 1-year notice for the tenant to have to vacate the property.
Okay. So I'm protected by law that way as a tenant.
Exactly.
I can't be asked to leave the property at a short notice. I need to have at least a 1-year notice.
Absolutely right.
Okay. And this notice can be served at any time during the tenancy contract?
Correct.
Okay. So even if I'm 2 months from the end of the tenancy, he can serve me this notice and then I have 12 months after that.
That's correct.
Fair enough. Understood. Kalpesh, if there is an unfortunate incident where the landlord is forcing an issue, let's say he's forcing an eviction notice or is insisting on increasing the rent beyond the slab system, what can the tenant do?
As far as the rental itself is concerned, if the landlord is trying to increase the rent beyond the slab specified by RERA, or if he is trying to evict you, you can go to the rent committee. You have to pay a fee of 3.5% of your annual rent.
Okay.
And lodge the complaint as to what is the grievance you have against the landlord. And the rent committee would basically look at the facts of the case and your tenancy contract and then give a ruling, a judgment as to what should be the correct way forward.
Okay.
But that protects a tenant from being exploited by a landlord or from facing exorbitant rental increases.
Okay. So by the same coin, can the landlord also approach the rent committee?
Absolutely. If the tenant does not pay on time and or does not agree to an increase which has been as per the slab specified, then of course the landlord can also approach the rent committee to resolve the same complaint.
Kalpesh, another question comes to my mind. Let's say, for example, this year I'm paying my rent in 4 checks. Can the landlord force me to pay it in 1 check next year?
No. The terms of the contract essentially remain the same. So the landlord can request you to make 2 or 3 payments instead of 4, but he can't force you.
Okay.
You cannot, by the same token, go for 6 checks or 7 checks. Again, you can request him.
Okay.
And it's up to him. But the terms remain the same as the previous year. If it was 4 checks, it's 4 checks. The only difference is now he can increase the rent if it is lower as per the slabs that we discussed earlier.
Okay, understood. Well, that's very, very helpful. Thank you, Kalpesh, for being on Expert Speak with us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
That was very enlightening. If you have any other questions regarding buy, sell, rent, invest, or otherwise, do mail us on propertyscape@queenbeeproduction.com. And as always, we love getting social on our Facebook page, facebook.com/colorstvme. That was it for the week. The property boom is back, and we will stay with it every step of the way. Until next week, stay smart, stay sharp, and keep watching PropertyScape.